I want you to close your eyes for a second. We are going to do a little sensory time travel.
Okay, I'm with you.
It's a Saturday afternoon in, say, 1994. You're 7 years old. You've just walked through a set of automatic sliding doors that rattled a little on the tracks.
I can hear them. That specific, slightly rickety sound.
The air conditioning hits you first. It's freezing cold. And then the smell hits you. It is a very specific industrial cocktail.
Oh, yeah, that smell.
Off-gassing vinyl from inflatable pool toys, a little bit of floor wax, maybe some stale popcorn, and cardboard, lots of cardboard.
It is a core memory for, I think, at least 3 generations of consumers. That smell is practically part of the American DNA at this point.
It really is.
It was the smell of sheer unadulterated possibility.
Exactly. It was the smell of, I might leave here with a super soaker, but we aren't here today just to wax poetic about Jeffrey the Giraffe or getting your first Game Boy.
Or the anxiety of the little ticket booth for video games.
Oh, the ticket system. We are here because, as of today, Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2026, we are looking at perhaps the strangest business case study on the 21st century.
It really is unique. We are looking at a company that didn't just go bankrupt. It didn't just restructure.
Yeah.
It was liquidated. It was dead. Its pulse was zero. In 2018, the U.S. operations ceased to exist.
And yet, here we are. If you drive past the Chicago premium outlets in Aurora, Illinois right now, or the Camarillo premium outlets in California, or walk through the Dallas-Fort Worth airport,
What do you see?
you see the backwards R.
You see Jeffrey. You see glistening brand new stores.
It is the retail equivalent of a zombie movie. But unlike a zombie, which usually looks a bit ragged, this brand is actually looking quite healthy.
That's a great way to put it.
It's arguably the most complex, chaotic, and fascinating resurrection story in modern business history. That is the tension we need to unpack today. How does a brand die so completely? I mean, we're talking 33,000 people fired, 735 stores gutted, lawsuits, anger, and then claws its way back to being a global brick-and-mortar player just 8 years later.
And to understand that, we have to look past the nostalgia. It's so easy to get caught up in the, I don't want to grow up jingle.
Right.
This isn't a story about toys. It's a story about private equity engineering, a catastrophic misunderstanding of the internet, and a brand that somehow became more valuable as a ghost than it was as a living company.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really dissect the anatomy of this resurrection. We're going to look at the air, land, and sea strategy that's unfolding right now in 2026.
It's a big piece of it.
We also need to talk about the collapse of the Australian arm just last year in 2025, which is a massive red flag that I feel like a lot of people in the business press are ignoring.
Oh, that Australian piece is critical. It's the counter-narrative to the glowing success story we're seeing in the U.S.
Exactly. But to get there, we have to go back to the start. And I was surprised to learn during the research for this that the category killer of toys, it didn't actually start with toys.
Not at all.
It started with furniture.
Right. We have to go back to 1948, post-war Washington, D.C. A man named Charles Lazarus opens a store. But he doesn't call it Toys R Us. He calls it Children's Supermart.
Children's Supermart. It sounds very Soviet, very utilitarian.
It was. Lazarus was a young guy, just 25 years old. He'd been a cryptographer during the war.
Wow, great.
He comes back and he sees all his friends getting married, having babies.
Yeah.
The baby boom is just kicking off. He figured logically these people need furniture. Cribs, high chairs, changing tables.
That's smart. I mean, follow the demographics, simple business plan.
Exactly. But he was also very observant. He noticed a fundamental flaw in the furniture business model almost immediately.
Which was what?
It's a low-frequency transaction. You buy a crib for your first kid. Maybe you reuse it for the second. You don't come back next week to buy another crib.
Right. It's a one-and-done purchase. Unless you're running an orphanage, you aren't buying cribs in bulk.
Exactly. But the parents kept coming in asking for, rattles and small toys to keep the kids occupied while they looked at the furniture.
Ah, okay. The add-on sale.
And Lazarus realized that unlike a solid oak crib, toys are ephemeral. They break. Kids outgrow them. Or the kid just gets bored.
The replacement cycle.
The replacement cycle for a toy is weeks or months, not years. That is where the recurring revenue was.
So he pivots. And it wasn't an overnight thing, right? It took a while.
No, it took about a decade. By 1957, he opens the first store dedicated exclusively to toys in Rockville, Maryland. And this is where the branding genius kicks in. He renames it Toys R Us.
Let's talk about that branding for a second. The backwards R. It drives grammar teachers crazy, but it was intentional.
Oh, it was genius. Pure genius. Lazarus designed it himself. He wanted it to look like a semi-literate child had written the sign.
It was a psychological signal.
Totally. It told parents, this is a place for your kids, and it told kids, this is a place where you were in charge. It stripped away the stuffiness of the department store. You know, where you weren't allowed to touch anything.
This was your domain. And this leads us to the concept of the category killer. We hear this term thrown around in business school or on CNBC, but what does it actually mean in this context? Because Toys R Us was really the prototype for this.
Right. A category killer is a retailer that specializes in one specific segment: toys, electronics, pet supplies, and stocks. Such a massive depth of inventory that generalist stores can't compete.
So before Toys R Us, where would you even buy a toy?
You'd go to a local mom and pop shop or maybe the hardware store. They had maybe 3 options for a doll. Toys R Us have 300 options. They had entire aisles of just dolls.
They killed the competition by sheer volume and selection.
They sucked the oxygen out of the room. From the 1960s through the 1990s, they were the predator. They rolled up the industry. They bought competitors like interstate department stores in '66. They drove small shops out of business.
And they just rode these massive cultural waves.
Oh, yeah. They grew alongside the rise of action figures. I mean, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, and then the massive video game boom of the '80s with Nintendo and Sega. They were perfectly positioned for all of it.
I think that's important to remember. We view them as the victim now because of what happened later, but for 40 years, they were the bully.
Absolutely. They dictated terms to Mattel and Hasbro. If Toys R Us didn't carry your toy didn't exist. They were the gatekeepers of childhood fun.
And they tried to keep evolving, right? I saw something about Concept 2000 store.
Yeah, that was in 1996. They tried to modernize with these Concept 2000 stores. The first one was in Raritan, New Jersey.
Oh, I remember seeing pictures of these, the blue facades.
Yes, blue facades, yellow-lined windows. They were trying to look modern, trying to get away from that warehouse feel. But even as they were doing that, the ground was shifting beneath them.
And that brings us to the beginning of the end, the 2000s. And this seems to be where the cracks don't just appear, they shatter the foundation.
That's a good way to put it.
We have a new CEO, John Eiler, who comes over from FAO Schwartz in 2000. But the landscape is changing. Walmart and Target are starting to chew away at their market share.
The 2000s are defined by 2 things that destroyed the category killer model: the rise of the loss leader strategy from big box retailers, and of course, the rise of the internet.
Okay, let's start with Walmart and this idea of the loss leader. How does that work? Break that down for us.
A loss leader is when a store sells a product at a price lower than what they paid for it. They literally lose money on the sale just to get a customer into the store.
So they're taking a hit on purpose.
On purpose. Walmart knew that if they sold the hot new Barbie for $10, even if it cost them $12 to buy it from Mattel, Mom would come in, buy the doll, and then spend $200 on groceries, clothes, and detergent.
They made their profit on the total basket, not on the individual toy.
Exactly. And Toys R Us couldn't do that.
No, because toys were the only thing in their basket.
Right. If Toys R Us sold the Barbie at a loss, they just lost money, period. They couldn't make it up on bananas or motor oil. They couldn't compete on price anymore. Their margins were being compressed to death.
Okay, so the physical retail war is going badly. Then comes the internet, and this is the part of the story that always frustrates me: the deal with the devil.
It is painful to look back on. It's 1999. E-commerce is exploding. Toys R Us tries to launch a website, toysrus.com, but their logistics, they just implode during the Christmas rush.
I remember the headlines: gifts don't arrive, it's a PR nightmare, parents are furious.
Beyond furious. So instead of fixing it, what do?
They outsource it.
They panicked. In 2000, they signed a 10-year exclusive deal with Amazon.
A 10-year deal.
10 years. The pitch was, Amazon handles the tech, the website, and the shipping. Toys R Us handles the inventory and buying.
On paper, that sounds...
Yeah.
Okay. You play to your strengths. You're a toy merchant. They're a tech company.
In the short term, sure, it stopped the bleeding. But in the long term, it was suicide. By partnering with Amazon, Toys R Us stopped learning.
What do you mean by that?
They didn't build their own data centers. They didn't develop the algorithms to predict demand. They didn't learn how to ship individual packages to doorsteps efficiently. They handed all their customer data and their entire digital future to the company that would eventually eat their lunch.
And then Amazon cheated on them.
Well, Amazon did what Amazon does. They realized they could make more money allowing third-party sellers to sell toys on the platform too. They breached the exclusivity clause.
So Toys R Us sued.
They sued in 2006, and they actually won. They got $51 million in damages in 2009.
But $51 million is nothing. It's pocket change compared to losing a decade of digital innovation.
Precisely. By the time they got their website back, the game was over. They were analog players trying to sprint in a digital world. They had lost the muscle memory of innovation.
But we still haven't talked about the actual cause of death. Because plenty of companies struggle with Amazon and survive. Best Buy is still here. Target is still here. Why did Toys R Us actually liquidate? We need to talk about the LBO.
This is the smoking gun. If you take one thing away from this deep dive, let it be this. Toys R Us didn't die because nobody wanted to buy toys. It died because of financial engineering.
In 2005.
In 2005, the company was taken private in a leveraged buyout, an LBO.
Okay, we need to break this down. What happened? Who were the players?
A group of private equity firms, Bain Capital, Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, so KKR, and Vornda Realty Trust. They bought the company for $6.6 billion.
Walk us through the mechanics of an LBO, because it sounds like the investors buy the company like I'd buy a car. But that's not really what happens, is it?
Not with their own money, no. I mean, not all of it. Imagine you want to buy a house that costs $1 million. You put down maybe $20,000 of your own cash and you borrow the other $980,000.
Wow.
But here's the trick. You don't take out the loan in your name. You take it out in the house's name. The house itself now has to pay the mortgage.
So Toys R Us, the company, was suddenly saddled with the debt used to purchase itself.
Yes. Overnight, they were loaded with over $5 billion in debt.
$5 billion. With a B.
And the service costs, the interest payments alone, were roughly $400 million a year.
Wait. $400 million a year just to pay the interest.
Just to pay the interest.
Right.
Before they paid a single employee, before they bought a single toy from Hasbro, before they paid the electric bill or the rent on their stores, they had to find $400 million.
And this explains so much. This explains why the stores started to look like dumps in the 2010s.
Exactly. You mentioned the smell earlier. By 2015, that smell included dirty carpets and flickering fluorescent lights.
Right.
They couldn't invest in the customer experience. They couldn't renovate. They couldn't build a better website to fight Amazon. Every spare dollar, every cent of profit went to the lenders.
So when people say the retail apocalypse killed Toys R Us, that's lazy analysis.
It is. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Amazon was the storm. The changing retail habits were the wind. But the debt was the reason the house collapsed.
It was the pre-existing condition.
Perfectly put. If they hadn't had that debt, they might have had the agility to pivot. They could have invested in prices or smaller, more experiential stores, but their hands were tied behind their backs.
Which brings us to the inevitable crash. Section 3 of our outline, the bankruptcy and liquidation. It's September 2017.
They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Now, Chapter 11 is usually about reorganization.
Right. It's not supposed to be a death sentence.
Exactly. The goal wasn't to close. It was to restructure that mountain of debt so they could breathe again. But the timing was horrific.
Why?
They filed right before the holiday season, the absolute worst time for a toy store to look unstable.
And consumer confidence tanked.
It wasn't just consumers, it was the suppliers. Companies like Mattel, Lego, Hasbro, they got nervous. They thought, if I ship $1 million worth of Barbies to Toys R Us, will they be able to pay me in January?
So they tightened their terms.
They demanded cash up front or, much stricter payment terms. Toys R Us didn't have the cash. The whole point of the bankruptcy was that they were out of cash.
So the shelves were empty, or at least thinner than usual, during the most important shopping season of the year.
And the holiday sales were a disaster, a complete disaster. They missed their targets by a mile. By March 2018, the lenders, who effectively owned the company, pulled the plug.
But they gave up on the reorganization.
They decided the company was worth more dead than alive. Sell off the inventory, sell off the real estate, and try to recoup some of their losses. Liquidation.
I remember the photos from that time. The signs that said, everything let go, and that heartbreaking picture of Jeffrey the giraffe waving goodbye with a suitcase. It was genuinely sad.
It was brutal. By June 29, 2018, all 735 U.S. stores were closed, and 33,000 people lost their jobs.
And without severance pay, right, that was a huge controversy.
Right. The private equity owners paid themselves millions in executive bonuses. But the rank-and-file employees got nothing. We can't gloss over that. It was a tragedy for the workforce. These were people who had worked there for 20, 30 years.
There was that brief moment where Party City tried to fill the gap with Toy City pop-ups, but yeah, it felt like the brand was dead.
Hmm.
Except
Yeah.
not everywhere. And this is a key plot point for where we are today. The Canadian arm survived.
Yes. This is a fascinating nuance. The Canadian division was financially healthier. It wasn't dragged down by the exact same debt structure in the same way. It was profitable.
So while the U.S. was liquidating, Canada was okay.
More than okay.
Mm-hmm.
In April 2018, a company called Fairfax Financial bought the Canadian division for about $234 million.
So if you were in Toronto or Vancouver, Toys R Us never left. It just kept chugging along.
Correct. And that's crucial because it kept the brand heartbeat alive in North America. It proved the store concept itself wasn't broken. The U.S. financial structure was.
Okay, so the U.S. operations are dead. We enter what I call the zombie years. This is Section 4, 2018 to 2021. The lenders decide not to sell the brand name, the intellectual property, but to try and revive it themselves.
It was a very clumsy, very experimental period. They realized the brand name and Jeffrey still had immense value, so they held on to it.
And their first move was something called Jeffrey's Toy Box.
Right, in late 2018. But this wasn't a store.
No, it was a wholesale concept. You'd walk into a Kroger supermarket and there would be a cardboard display of Toys R Us branded toys.
It felt desperate, honestly, like seeing a washed-up celebrity doing low-budget car insurance commercials.
It was a way to keep the trademark active. In
Yeah.
trademark law, you have to use it or you lose it.
That makes sense.
Then, in January 2019, the company emerged from bankruptcy as a new entity called True Kids.
True Kids. Okay.
And they tried a few things. They relaunched the website, but get this, they partnered with Target for fulfillment.
So you go to toysrus.com, buy a toy, and a box with red bullseyes would show up at your house.
Exactly. It was so weird. And then in 2020, they switched that partnership to Amazon.
Back to the X. Oh my God.
It was purely a licensing play. But they did try to open physical stores, 2 of them.
Right. They opened 2 small concept stores in late 2019, one in New Jersey at the Westfield Garden State Plaza and one in Houston at the Galleria.
And these weren't the old giant warehouses.
No, they were small, about 10,000 square feet, a fraction of the size of the old big boxes. There were experiential play areas, little theaters, things to do. They were trying to be more interactive.
And very, very unlucky.
The worst timing imaginable. They opened in late 2019, 3 months later.
COVID-19 sweeps the globe.
Malls shut down. Retail freezes. Those 2 concept stores didn't stand a chance. They both closed in January 2021.
So for the second time, Toys R Us is dead in the U.S. No physical stores. Just a website fulfilled by Amazon. It feels like the end of the road. But then the plot twists again.
Another twist.
A new player enters the game.
WHP Global. In March 2021, this brand management firm acquired a controlling interest in True Kids. And this is where the strategy shifts from flailing zombie to strategic resurrection.
Who are these guys? What's their background?
WHP Global is backed by Oak Tree Capital Management.
Yeah.
They're brand managers.
Yeah.
They own brands like Anne Klein and Joseph Abboud. Their philosophy is generally asset light.
What does that mean in this context?
It means they realized that the value of Toys R Us wasn't in signing expensive long-term real estate leases and managing thousands of employees. The value was in the name, in Jeffrey, in the nostalgia.
So their first big move wasn't building stores, it was the Macy's deal.
This was the game changer. Absolutely brilliant. In August 2021, they announced a partnership to put a Toys R Us shop inside every Macy's in America.
And they moved fast. I remember seeing them pop up. By October 2022, they were in over 400 Macy's locations.
It was a genius move. It solved the real estate problem instantly. They didn't have to sign 400 leases. They didn't have to pay for 400 electric bills. They used Macy's existing foot traffic.
And for Macy's, it brought in families who maybe hadn't shopped at a department store in years.
It was a perfect symbiotic relationship. For Toys R Us, it put the brand back in front of millions of people instantly with very low risk.
But they didn't stop at the store within a store model. They wanted the big flagship experience back. And they went big. December 2021, the American Dream Mall in New Jersey.
The American Dream Mall, yeah. 20,000 square feet. 2 stories that had a slide going between the floors, an ice cream parlor.
This was a statement piece.
Absolutely. They were saying, we aren't just a section in Macy's. We are still a destination. And then fast forward to November 2023, they opened another massive flagship at the Mall of America in Minnesota.
Which brings us to the modern era. We are talking late 2023 through today, February 2026. This is where the strategy goes from recovery to what looks like world domination.
I think that's fair.
They call it the air, land, and sea strategy.
It sounds like a military operation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it effectively categorizes their expansion.
Let's break it down. Air.
Air refers to airport stores. They opened the first airport store in Dallas-Fort Worth back in November 2023. It's a smart play.
Why?
You have a captive audience, parents traveling with bored kids, or business travelers realizing at the last minute they forgot to buy a gift for their child back home. High prices, high margins.
I walked past that one in Terminal A. It's surprisingly well stocked for an airport shop. Okay, C.
C is cruise ships. They started putting branded stores on cruise lines. Again, a captive audience. People are in a vacation spending mindset. You're already spending money. What's another $40 for a Lego set?
Makes sense. But land is the big gamble. Because after saying they were going asset light late last year, late 2025, they went heavy again. They started building massive standalone flagship stores.
This is the flagship explosion of 2025. This is where the story gets really interesting right now. It started slow, but then in September 2025, they hit the gas pedal.
What were the first ones?
September 20th, 2025, they opened in Aurora, Illinois at the Chicago Premium Outlets. October 25th, Camarillo, California. November 1st, West Des Moines, Iowa.
Wait, West Des Moines? That's interesting. They're not just sticking to the coasts.
No, they're targeting the heartland. These aren't just corners of a department store. These are standalone locations. They are betting that the experience of the toy store is back in demand.
And the openings kept coming.
Oh, yeah. Through the holiday season of 2025, they opened in Maryland, Nebraska, Colorado, New York, Kansas. I mean, they were cutting ribbons almost every week.
And we can't ignore the international push either. I feel like we only focus on the U.S., but they have been aggressive in Latin America.
Very aggressive. They opened in Mexico in late 2023 via partnership with Liverpool, the department store chain there. But the real push was late 2025 in South America.
Where would they go?
They opened the first store in Chile in November 2025 in Santiago, and then Peru just a couple of weeks later in Lima.
So if you look at the map right now, in 2026, Toys R Us is growing on 3 continents. It's in airports, it's on boats, it's in Macy's, it's opening standalone stores. It looks like a massive, undeniable success story.
It certainly looks that way. The press releases are glowing, the pictures are great, but
I hear a but coming. A big one.
we have to talk about Australia.
The warning sign. The canary in the coal mine.
We cannot ignore what happened in Australia. While the U.S. was popping champagne and cutting ribbons in late 2025, the Australian arm of Toys R Us collapsed. Again.
Talk us through that timeline. This is recent history.
So the Australian arm had also been revived after the initial bankruptcy. It was even listed on the ASX, the Australian Stock Exchange. It seemed like it was stabilizing.
But it wasn't.
But on June 5, 2025, less than a year ago, it went into voluntary administration. It's their version of bankruptcy.
Why? What went wrong there that's supposedly going right here?
The same old demons. Tight margins, inflation affecting consumer spending, high supply chain costs. It was just losing money, hand over fist. By July 2025, it was taken over by a company called Directed Electronics Australia and delisted from the stock exchange.
So literally 7 years after the initial bankruptcy, it failed again in a major Western market.
It serves as a potent reminder. The brand name Toys R Us is not a magic shield. It doesn't protect you from fundamental economics.
That's a huge point.
The retail market is still brutal. Inflation is still real. So while we celebrate the U.S. expansion, the Australian failure sits there as a reminder that back doesn't necessarily mean safe.
That is a sobering thought. Just because you have a gleaming new flagship in Des Moines doesn't mean you're printing money.
Exactly. Rent is expensive. Staffing is expensive. If the economy takes a dip, or if another hot trend emerges online, those standalone stores are very vulnerable.
Let's pivot to something a little lighter before we wrap up. Let's talk about the culture, because you can't talk about Toys R Us without Jeffrey.
The spokes animal, he's an icon. You know, he started as Dr. Giraffe in the 1950s.
Dr. Giraffe? That sounds like a bootleg cereal mascot. Or a very questionable pediatrician.
I know, right? He evolved. He became the Jeffrey we know in the 70s. But do you remember April the giraffe?
Oh, the viral live stream, 2017. The whole world was watching this pregnant giraffe give birth at a zoo in New York.
Whole world. And Toys R Us sponsored it. It was this massive viral marketing win for them right before the bankruptcy. It was a high point. It showed that the brand still had immense cultural relevance. People loved the connection.
And speaking of comebacks, it's not just the toy store. Babies R Us is pulling a Lazarus, too.
Yes. They opened a flagship at the American Dream Mall in July of 2023. But the big news was the Kohl's deal.
Right, announced in May 2024.
They open 200 Babies R shops inside Kohl's stores.
It's a Macy's playbook all over again.
Exactly. Partner with an existing department store, reduce overhead, leverage the brand. It's a smart way to capture the baby market without the risk of owning massive, expensive real estate.
And I have to mention the movies. This is one of my favorite weird facts from the research. Did you know the movie Spirit Halloween from 2022 was filmed inside an abandoned Toys R Us?
That is the most meta thing I've ever heard. A movie about a pop-up store that takes over abandoned retail spaces, filmed in the abandoned carcass of the very store that Spirit Halloween usually takes over.
It's retail inception.
It's the circle of life. Or the circle of retail death. It's perfect.
And we've got a new movie coming, right? An actual Toys R Us movie, announced back in April 2025.
Yes, produced by a company called Story Kitchen and Toys R Us Studios.
They have a studio now.
Apparently. They were trying to turn the IP into a media franchise. Barbie did it. Lego did it. They look at those billions of dollars and think, why not Jeffrey?
I'd watch a Jeffrey the Giraffe origin story. Maybe a gritty reboot where Dr. G. Raff loses his medical license and turns to selling toys to pay off his student loans.
Let's not give them any ideas. But it speaks to the strategy. They aren't just selling plastic. They are selling a character, an experience. If kids love the character, maybe the price of the toy matters less.
Okay, let's bring it all home. Let's synthesize this. We've gone from the furniture store in 1948 to the category killer to the debt-ridden giant to the grave, and now to this massive multi-platform resurrection in 2026.
It's a story of financial engineering gone wrong and then perhaps financial engineering gone right. The LBO in 2005 saddled them with debt that made them unable to compete. The liquidation wiped that debt slate clean.
A hard reset.
A very hard reset. And the new ownership, WHP Global, has been very clever about asset-light expansion partnerships with Macy's, Kohl's, cruise ships.
They aren't trying to rebuild the empire of 1990 exactly as it was. They are building a modern, more diversified version of it. But the question remains. We are standing here in early 2026. There are gleaming new stores in Iowa and California. Is it sustainable?
That is the billion-dollar question. We are seeing a swing back to physical retail. I think people missed the experience during the pandemic. They missed the smell of the store you talked about at the top.
I think so too.
E-commerce is great for efficiency, but it's terrible for discovery and wonder. Toys R Us is betting that the wonder is worth the rent.
But with the Australia collapse in the rearview mirror, we know the ice is thin.
The debt is gone, but the competition isn't. Amazon is still Amazon. Walmart is still Walmart. Target is still Target.
Yeah.
Toys R Us has to offer an experience that is worth the trip, worth the higher prices. If they become just a warehouse with shelves again, they will fail again. They need the magic.
So here is my final provocative thought for you listening today. Next time you are in Macy's or you see one of these new standalone Toys R Us stores, walk in. Don't just look at the toys. Look at the business. Look at the foot traffic. Look at the prices on the shelves. Are they successfully selling a product or are they successfully selling a memory?
And ask yourself, is the memory worth the markup? Because that is what they are banking on. That nostalgia has a price tag.
Ooh, that's cynical, but accurate. That's it for this deep dive into the resurrection of Toys R Us. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious, watch your margins, and maybe go buy a Lego set for yourself. You've earned it.
Goodbye, everyone.